what's a junior company doing hyperspectral for? Well, you can see from the slide here, the easy route for most junior explorationists is to take the easy beaten track, and the important things for their shareholders are raise money, drill holes, raise the share price, sell the company, make the shareholders money. Technology, for 99.99% of shareholders that invest in junior companies, they could care less. They just care about making money. So why are we, as a junior company, doing this technology and going down a different route? Because I work for a junior company, this is the typical disclaimer, I'm sure you'll read through that. So before I start, I'd just like to thank CoreScan and the team at CoreScan. They've been a pleasure to work with, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about is because of collaborative efforts with them. Also our team with our subsidiary company in Peru, Southern Legacy Peru, and also Regulus Resources for the permission to present this material. So why are we doing CoreScan? Well, we want to get consistent identification of complex mixed alteration minerals. Many of the types of rocks that we're looking at, and I'll show you a little bit more detail in a minute, are very complex interaction of different mineralizing systems, and a lot of the mineralogy is not obvious to the naked eye, even for an experienced geologist's eye. So we're able to systematically define textural, temporal relationships of complex mineral assemblages, able to determine the detailed chemistry and crystallinity of various clay and mica species. And this could be valuable not only in vectoring in our exploration efforts, but we really think as a value add is it's a consistent collection of geotechnical information that you can get from doing this. But most important is the downstream implications of having this detailed mineralogical data for mining, aspects about blasting, stope stability, crushing and grinding. We've heard many of these things from both Warren and also just recently from Pim about the possibility of integration, that mineralogy is absolutely key. So just a little bit of background. Currently they're about, and I'm not a salesman for CoreScan, just in case after this you think I am, but I do believe in the technology. There's currently 12 labs worldwide, and we are the only junior company in the world that currently has a lab based at our facilities. We're currently, there's a second lab, and we were the only lab in Peru, and now there's a second lab that's been installed in the south of Peru. This is a picture of our core logging facility in Cajamarca in northern Peru, and tucked away in the corner here you can see the core lab. This is a little bit out of date now. We've now completed approximately 40,000 meters of scanning in about 80 plus holes. And this is, again, one of the only projects that I'm aware of in the world where somebody's analyzing every meter of core from the deposit. There's been a lot of people using this on selected sections or selected holes, but we're doing every meter of the deposit. So just to show you the deposit, we're up in northern Peru. The project's called Anticori, and it's in elephant country. We're just an hour drive north of Yanacocha. There's Cerro Corona and a lot of other big porphyry deposits near us, La Granja just up to the north of us. This is a Google Earth image. You can see our property locations here in the red, pink, and yellow, and we're right beside an actively producing open pit mine by Bonaventura in southern Peru copper, and then 6 kilometers away is the Cerro Corona mine. So it's an active area. This is a complex geologic cross-section cartoon. We don't need to know all the details, but just so you understand the complexities here, we've effectively got basement rocks that are Cretaceous age sediments, quartzites in gray, calcareous siltstones in brown, and limestones in blue. Those are unconformably overlain by Miocene volcanics that host high sulfidation style mineralization. And then we have multiple phases of porphyry intrusions and breccias. Very complex. There's at least 4 mineralizing events here that are superimposed on one another. If we break it down into really basic, simplistic cartoon style, the alteration can be subdivided into 4 styles. There's a deeper porphyry breccia skarn environment. There's the actual skarn mineralization itself, shown in green, and then the high sulfidation and its feeder structures sitting up here in the Miocene volcanics. And then we have a young overprint of base metal gold carbonate style mineralization. So very complex, and this comes with a very complex overprinting sequence of alteration. We're currently scanning for more than 40 minerals systematically across those deposit types, both with skarn minerals and a variety of the more traditional ones that you're probably more accustomed to in terms of white micas and the clays. And in the subsequent slides, I'm just going to show you a few of examples of things that we're being able to pull out. But here you can see, I'll just keep notice of the hot colors here, so you'll see some grades and we'll see some associations. And at the end of the day, like I said in the beginning, for us as a junior company, we need to drill good results and high grades, and that's the name of the game. So this is an example where we have a paleo weathering horizon, and it's hard to read the names up here, I apologize, but this is white mica, and you can see there's a definite break here, and you can see we start to see the presence here of gypsum and anhydrite, and up here there's just relics. This is a paleo weathering. Basically it's the sulfate leach zone, and this is the sulfate front. So we can easily map that out in 3 dimensions with all of our drill holes because we are doing this systematically for every meter of core. And you can also see that in this zone of where we see the sulfate leach, we're also seeing smectites and iron oxides here. Okay. This is an example from skarn where in the naked eye you look at it and it just looks like chlorite and epidote. But when we start to look at it with core scan and the hyperspectral, what we start to see, and it's a little bit difficult, I apologize again, but there is Vesuvianite here, and there's also clinochlor. And we can see that there's not equal amounts of chlorite nor epidote. There is some sort of a zonation going on here. And then when we get out of this zone, we go into something that's much more white mica, chlorite dominated, and above just mostly white mica. So there is zonations that we can pick out, and quite often the boundaries are knife sharp. But in the naked eye, it's very difficult to see some of these transitions. Here's an example of some porphyry-style alteration that's in the sedimentary rocks adjacent to where we believe the porphyry source is. And here we can see the grades of copper, very high-grade zone. And you can see there's a very strong association with stronger white mica and the development of anhydrite in this case. Here's another example. This comes from the high sulfidation environment. Again, very high copper and gold grades, but here the association is very, very different. Here we see a very strong antipathetic relationship between pyrophyllite and white mica. So outside the zones of high grade, we see more white mica. Inside the high grade zones, more pyrophyllite. And we also see a bit of a diaspore starting to come in as well, which is completely, you're unable to see that visually with a naked eye or a hand lens. This is another example of a high sulfidation mineralization, but in this case it's slightly different, where we can see, we can see pyrophyllite here, and then you can see beautiful zonation where we start to pick up some white micas on the flanks, and then eventually we get out here and it's mostly white mica and there's virtually no pyrophyllite. And you can see the grades here, where the highest grades are these zones right here, and then the inner zone has diaspore, I can't read it from this angle, but I think it's kaolinite, and I can't read that one, but, huh? Okay, dickite. So we can start to map these out. You can see the boundaries are quite sharp, so you can start to build a 3-dimensional model with this. Okay, So really, what's the value proposition here? I think as an exploration company, we're focused on finding mineralization and then developing a model. And really, this is the part that's the most critical part of the chain. Because if we don't get this part right, all the rest of this is like building a house of cards. And so we really want to make sure we characterize this. And I think that's what really has come out from what Warren was trying to tell us about collecting good data early, and some of the things Pim was saying as well. And we are 100% in agreement with that proposition. We have a very detailed flow chart of work that we do on our projects. I don't want to go through the details on this, but just to point out that collection of core scan data is an integral part of the work that we do. That helps feed into our three-dimensional geological modeling of lithology, alteration, mineralization, the analysis of the core scan data, and also we do very systematic, both reflected and transmitted light petrography to characterize not only the gangue mineralogy, but also the sulfide mineralogy and the textures. And this all goes in concert with us building a resource model and helping us to guide where we might want to do metallurgical testing, and ultimately developing a geometallurgical model and a PEA. And then eventually, hopefully by this point, somebody really likes the deposit we have and they offer us a lot of money, and we go away and they take all of our beautiful data that we've collected for them and build a mine. So we're integrating a lot of different things. This is not news, but we take all of our detailed geological logging. We have a system where we use tablet-based Wi-Fi, so this information goes immediately to our database by Wi-Fi, and our geos can plot that out within a few minutes of having it go to the database. We build our three-dimensional geological models. We integrate our detailed petrographic data, our multi-element 4-acid digestion geochemistry, obviously our resource modeling, our detailed core scan data, our metallurgical test work gets fed in, and as Pim pointed out, that this is an iterative process. It's not a one-time process. We're continually reevaluating all of these aspects and plugging them into the model. So, ways in which a model like this can benefit, I think, are from this audience probably pretty obvious, but you have to remember the audience that sometimes I have to deal with, they don't get why we're spending the money to do this kind of stuff. So I have to tell them that we're really adding value to the deposit, and we're adding value to the company, that eventually a major is going to come along and say, hey, this is great data, they've saved us a lot of headaches, and it makes our decision about whether we think the deposit's worth buying a lot easier. And so that's the perspective for us. Like Pim pointed out, things like the relative hardness, the bond work index, all kinds of things that you can start to, at a very early stage in the project's development, put together. Because we're doing detailed petrography on the sulfide mineralogy, again, we can plug that in as well. Questions about if it's a heap leach operation, what kind of clays, how is that going to behave on the leach pads? All of these things are important to a potential buyer looking at a project. And obviously, it helps in also potentially justifying, we're in this process right now because we're doing a 43-101 resource calculation, and having this kind of information gives the engineers more comfort about pit angles and what the walls might support. If there's a lot of clay, they're obviously not going to give you a very steep pit angle, but if you can demonstrate that there isn't a lot of clay there, they might be a little bit more liberal with you. And that really has a big impact on, at the end of the day, how many tons fall in your pit and you can report. So having a model like this also, I think, really is going to help us to predict possible problems. Because how often have we heard that the mine is going into feasibility, or it's in feasibility, and they start the plant up after spending several $billion dollars, and it doesn't work, or the recoveries came back about half of what they thought. And then they scramble to go back and try to get all the detailed information that they should have collected earlier on. And so we think this is the way of the future, and that's why we're doing this kind of work in conjunction with other things. So one of the things I hear from my side of the business is, well, it creates a lot of data. What the hell do you do with all this data? Well, I don't have to deal with all the data. Most of the data is stored on big servers and backups with CoreScan in Perth, Australia. And really, they do all the heavy lifting and heavy data analysis. What I get from them is, I want to know how this data corresponds to my assay intervals and how it's going to help me with my assay intervals. So we composite our data to our 1 to 3 meter assay intervals, and also composite to our block size for our resource model. So we can start to ascribe rough ideas of mineralogy in our block model for the resource calculation. And we also get the nice, pretty visual color images, which everybody, I think, is probably accustomed to. But really, where the strength is all the hard numerical data, the non-sexy backbone of it that is also available for analysis. And we're really just in the process of getting into analyzing that data. The other one that we always hear is, and I got this from our board of directors when I first proposed that we do this, is, yeah, it's a great idea, but it's too expensive. And the CoreScan people always cringe when I show them as the big money-eating rat here. But you can see the three guys there dressed in their suits, and really, it's not that expensive considering that they drilled 2 or 3 holes that were 1,000 meters deep and didn't hit anything. If they would have spent that money on doing some of this work, they might have saved one of those 1,000-meter holes and hit ore. And roughly, for the 40,000 meters that we've done to date, is equivalent of about 1 or 1.5 deep drill holes. So for us, it really makes sense from a business point of view. So future value add, I think, is pretty obviously that people have talked about the geometallurgy. But for me, the idea is that really this is, at the end of the day, integrating a lot of things that normally wouldn't get done till pre-feasibility or even feasibility stage. And we're starting to do this at the exploration and advanced exploration stage. And ideally, we're creating one model early on that both exploration geologists can use for targeting, and mine engineers can start to use, and geotech engineers, and the process engineers, and the metallurgists, and the environmentalists can also start to use this for acid mine drainage, and really having a much better idea of the characteristics of the mineralization that we have as early as possible. So overall, for us, this is a value add to any future buyer of the project. So for us, it's a no-brainer, the integration of hyperspectral scanning into the workflow of an advanced exploration stage program. And thanks for your attention.